class is this very funny guy.
The monologue.
Ted Kennedy got married this last weekend, and boy, he's going to be in for a surprise when he sobers up, huh?
The stars.
Just pretend like you're talking to me until we're off the air so it won't seem weird.
Okay.
The management.
I pay your people, my friend, and I pay you, and I can talk to you any damn way I see fit.
The Larry Sanders Show, America's most talked about talk show, Friday 11:15 on BBC Two.
Because we stayed for the conclusion of the golf this afternoon, tonight's tale from Bourges can now be seen at 1 o'clock. A journey to the past lies in store for our hero. After a serious accident, he finds his mind plays tricks with him. The South is in 35 minutes. And because of the golf coverage, we weren't able to bring you the chess roundup at the published time. So now on BBC Two, later than expected, we join Peter Snow for a look at the way the championships are going.
World champion Garry Kasparov is within one game of victory. Can Britain's Nigel Short survive until next weekend? Good evening and welcome to our Sunday night roundup of the World Chess Championships. Here in London, Nigel Short failed to capitalise on his very promising play early last week and only managed to draw when he was playing white yesterday. So with the score now Short 6.5 to Kasparov's 11.5, the world champion needs only one win or two draws for victory in this 24-game match. We'll be looking back at last week's 3 games in just a moment. The other match, the FIDE World Championship in Jakarta between Jan Timman and Anatoly Karpov, has just begun its second half, and we'll bring you the story of the play there on Tuesday. Now, here in London, the star game last week was clearly Tuesday's, when Nigel Short beat the champion for the first time. We'll be taking you through that game in just a moment. The intriguing thing about it, though, was that Short won it with a streaming cold, which you might think should have put him at a disadvantage. But as Australian Grandmaster Ian Rogers remembers, Short does have a way of striking back when he's under the weather, as Rogers found to his cost when he was playing Short in the last Chess Olympics.
He was lying on the table like this and really looking as if he was completely out of it, and so much so that I went up to the English captain and I said, look, Nigel appears to be pretty sick. Ask him if he wants a couple of hours delay and we can continue the game later. And I think the captain approached him and Nigel said no, he wanted to play on. And 5 or 10 moves later, he's still slouched, looking really very sick, probably just the flu, but looking as if he's not interested in the game at all. And I see a clever way to win a pawn and I go for it. And then all of a sudden, this big series of sacrifices hits me and he wakes up and he crushes me completely.
Anyway, now, our usual sparkling cocktail of Dominic Lawson, editor of The Spectator and close friend of Nigel Short, Bill Hardston, chess correspondent of The Independent, and David Norwood, international grandmaster and chess columnist for the Daily Telegraph, has the added ingredient tonight of Julian Hodgson, who's also an international grandmaster and tells us he's ranked number 3 in the Western world. Anyway, let's start with Short's cold, Dominic. Did it win him that game on Tuesday?
No, I don't think it did. I think Kasparov won him the game by playing as if he had influenza. But in fact, Nigel does, as Ian said, have a record of winning games like this, and he beat the world number 3 Anand in a game earlier this year. He told me that he'd been up all night drinking cognac, and he could barely see the pieces at the beginning of the game. So, and Julian, I know, has won many games in this state of inebriation. So I think
why is it that being sick in some way, does it help?
Well, the thing is, when you're sick, you feel so bad, you want to put all your energy concentrating on the chess to forget about how ill you're feeling. And then you just play lots better because you don't get distracted. You're not thinking, what am I going to drink tonight? What am I going to eat? What am I going to do? You just think about the chess and you forget about your cold.
David Norwood, does it ring true to you?
Ish. You certainly play well with a hangover, that's definitely true. The reason
Speak for yourself.
The reason Short won the game was because he was adopting the BBC strategy, which was to play it very safe. And if it takes him to have a cold to do it, then so much the better. But of course, he played very solid and boring, and that's the way to play against Kasparov, because Kasparov gets frustrated and he's self-destructed. Short made winning look easy again.
This is, well, I don't get involved in dispute, but I think it's a bit...
That's not like you,
it's a bit extraordinary that David wants to take all the credit for Nigel's wins by adopting his strategy.
No, I'll share it. I'll share it.
And in fact,
I'll join in too.
This is exactly what happened on Thursday. Nigel adopted exactly the same so-called BBC strategy of playing safe. And of course, as you described rightly, it was a failure. So, but that will be Nigel's fault. That will not be the BBC's fault or David Norwood's fault.
It wasn't a failure on Thursday, was it?
He drew with Black.
He drew with Black and he almost won.
I'm talking about Saturday, sorry, the white game.
That wasn't a phase. He's
Wasn't a
played
failure.
boring all week and he's 2-1 up this week. It's
yeah,
the
it's
first
2-1
week.
up.
He's had a
He's
boring
won.
week and he's had a good week, Dominic.
Order, gentlemen. Let us start looking at last week's game. Now, first of all, before we come back to Tuesday's game, which clearly was the excitement, let's leave that to the end. Let's take Thursday's game, the draw, but a very exciting one. Bill.
But Thursday's game had the move of the match so far. I think the most surprising move. We'll join it after 24 moves. Short playing Black. He's just moved his rook to this square, which puts a little bit of pressure on this bishop, which can't run away because there'd be a black knight coming in to check here. Now, what we've been talking about all the time in this game was Black's doubled pawns here, which make his 4 pawns to 3 pawns on this side of the board a useless pawn majority. So White's got an extra pawn on the other side, and Black's trying to stay active to make up for his bad pawn. So we were looking forward to a great long end game, and Kasparov moved his king forward to remove any possibility of a knight check on this square. Short captured a pawn. Kasparov, now it turns out, should have taken it with the bishop, but after a little thought, took back with the pawn, and then was rather shocked when this bishop move suddenly shot out at him.
The interesting thing is that I spoke to Nigel at the time, and he said that...
Certainly not at the time when he was playing the game.
Just after the game, although we do, yes. And he said that after he took on g3, he could tell that Kasparov was panicking because he'd missed this idea of the bishop landing on the square f2. And he realized that if he took back h takes g, the bishop would take his pawn on f2. And after 6 minutes thought, Kasparov recovered and very cleverly played f takes g3, avoiding the bishop taking the pawn on f2. And then, of course, exactly the same move, the same thing. And the reason why Kasparov was so furious and was sort of drumming his fingers on the table and shaking his head was because he'd seen the idea in one form and missed it in another.
His emotions are very visible, Kasparov, aren't they? Does Nigel Short like that, or does he conceal what he's feeling?
Nigel, David, you've played him, and I would say that Nigel is quite good at concealing his emotions, certainly compared to Kasparov, who's a completely open book. I think that's fun for the spectators to see Kasparov almost bemoaning his position. But I think Nigel has developed perhaps a poker face. I don't think he's naturally like that.
No, Nigel's very calm. He's very calm. Very professional.
We've left the bishop on this square a long time, which was about how long Kasparov left it there. But it has to be taken. If White's rook moves, then the bishop goes, and Black gets a very big advantage. So bishop had to go, and then we can see the idea of the thing. The rook comes down and takes this pawn with check. If the king goes to this square, then either of the black rooks can take this bishop. Black wins his piece back. So the king had to go back here. And then the real point, other rook takes this bishop. Black's already given up a bishop, now gives up a rook for a bishop, making it a whole rook. And this move wins the rook back. So the net result of the whole thing is that Black has simply won the pawn that was on that square. So Black was a pawn up in an endgame from this position, which we thought was slightly worse for him.
Julian,
unfortunately, the endgame ended up in a draw.
Julian, what did you think of that game?
Well, I must admit, I was actually in Spain when this game was happening, and someone was reading through the moves. I was staying in someone's flat, and he said, Short's just gone completely mad. He's just lost a bishop. And I thought, what's Nigel doing? I mean, he's just a piece down. And it took me about 2 minutes to see the idea. I was looking, I just couldn't see it. And then it suddenly struck me, and I thought, Kasparov must have missed that one, and he's not going to be very happy. That was my feeling. He's just be really angry because
It was a very exciting game.
yeah.
It was. I mean, I think that Nigel walked off the stage and made a little, after playing the move, he played it instantly, and then made a little gesture with his fist to his friends in the front row, because it was a very, very satisfying move to play. It was a sort of almost a swindle, and they're rather satisfying to play when you're strategically really under pressure and you find a way to completely turn the position over.
Right.
They're nice moves to play.
Let's move on to, before we again go back to Tuesday's game, which is the star one of the week. Let's go to Saturday's game. Now, Dominic, Saturday's game was, short was white. He'd had a success on the Tuesday, done pretty well on the Thursday, we've just been discussing. And yet he failed to do much on the Saturday. What went wrong, if that's a fair question?
Yes, I mean, I think it's interesting that now when Nigel draws with white, it's described as a failure. I think this is a very interesting change of emphasis.
Well, it's very important for success right
no,
now.
I know, but I mean, we just describe drawing with Kasparov as a failure, I think is interesting. But the point was that he went into a line that Kasparov knows fantastically well. It's a very calculated risk. It was a line that Kasparov had played as white and won brilliantly. And I think Nigel wanted to see what he had to offer from the other side, and he had quite a lot to offer. In fact, Nigel told me that he felt that he got the better position out of the opening in the early middle game, and that somehow he mishandled it. He tried to play it very quietly, positionally, good BBC style, but it didn't quite suit him, and he allowed Kasparov, if not to get a big advantage, at least to outplay him in the early middle game, and I think that was disappointing, and I think he had hoped to win the game.
David Norman, was there any really chance of anybody winning that game yesterday, do you think?
No, okay, it was a bit dull. We're not saying that the BBC style is going to win him every game with white. That isn't the point. The idea is to sort of bore him a bit, and occasionally he's going to go a bit nutty.
Get the public flocking to chess.
Exactly. Well, they can't do any worse, right? And no, the idea is occasionally Kasparov is going to do a nutty, and that's where Short picks up the pieces. But of course, drawing with Kasparov, he's not a failure, as Dominic said.
All right, let's move straight on to the excitement of the week. Bill, take us through Tuesday's game, which of course was the one game so far that Short's managed to win.
The game where the cold forced him to play in the way that we've
Yes.
been saying he should have been doing
The
from
BBC
the start.
style.
The way you played.
Really dully.
I'm an incredibly boring player now.
Short white, what has become the conventional opening for them. Actually, most of Short's games with white in this